The book of Ezekiel contains a description of a person known as the King of Tyre. Despite the fact that the King of Tyre was a real historical figure, the Bible's account of him seems to go well beyond this human leader. Though Ezekiel was speaking about the real King of Tyre at the time, he seemed to shift into the distant past with an account of Satan's first fall. Tyre's prince is featured in the first part, while Tyre's king is featured in the second. When you look closely, you can see that the prince of Tyre was a human being. Even though he claimed to be a god, he was clearly a human. Tyre's king, on the other hand, was unmistakably not a human being. This chapter gives us a glimpse into Satan's workings. We have a human ruler, the prince of Tyre, and a satanic ruler, the king of Tyre, behind him in the unseen realm. The human ruler is little more than a puppet, whose movements are dictated by strings from the invisible realm. When you start to see this truth, history and politics take on a whole new meaning. Tyre is regarded to be one of the Phoenician coast's earliest settlements, having been founded long before the Israelites arrived in Canaan. Tyre's ancient beginnings are confirmed by Isaiah as from days of old. Tyre's history is more substantial than that of neighboring Sidon, which is thought to be the oldest Phoenician city. Tyre means rock, which is a fitting explanation for the rocky coastal fortification. Tyre flourished as a marine metropolis and a bustling economic center in ancient times. The world-famous purple dye was the area's most important export at the time. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, say to the ruler of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the pride of your heart you say, I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god in the heart of the seas. But you are a mere mortal and not a god, though you think you are as wise as a god. Are you wiser than Daniel? Is no secret hidden from you? By your wisdom and understanding you have gained wealth for yourself and amassed gold and silver in your treasuries. By your great skill in trading you have increased your wealth, and because of your wealth your heart has grown proud. Therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you think you are wise as a god, I am going to bring foreigners against you, the most ruthless of nations. They will draw their swords against your beauty and wisdom, and pierce your shining splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die a violent death in the heart of the seas. Will you then say, I am a god, in the presence of those who kill you? You will be but a mortal, not a god, in the hands of those who slay you. You will die the death of the uncircumcised at the hands of foreigners. I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 1 to 10. We find, to no surprise, that the leader of this proud city was a proud king who said, I am a god. God's rebuttal was, Yet you are a man and not a god, though you have regarded your heart as that of a god. Because he had amassed so much wealth for his realm through remarkable trading skill, this king thought he was wiser than Daniel. But God had a very ungodly end in store for this haughty monarch. The city's monarch, like the people of Tyre, would be dragged down to the pit when the city fell, and he, like all of God's enemies, would die the death of the uncircumcised. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up a lament concerning the king of Tyre and say to him, This is what the sovereign Lord says. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you, carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald, topaz, onyx, and jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 11 to 13. The fourth and last oracle against the king of Tyre has been the focus of much attention from commentators. Many people believe that Ezekiel chapter 28 goes beyond the king of Tyre and addresses Satan himself. Indeed, the assertions of chapter 28 verses 12 to 19 cannot be applied to just any human ruler, let alone one whom God has just condemned as a mere man with divine pretensions. The power behind this ruler, then, is the one we're introduced to in these words. This being is Lucifer, who became Satan after rebelling against God in heaven. He was full of intelligence and flawless beauty. He was in God's presence in Eden. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 14 and 15. Also, Satan wasn't just any angel. He was the highest of God's created beings, an appointed guardian cherub. Lucifer was right in the middle of God's fire. As the highest-ranking angel, he stood in God's presence. He was tasked with leading the entire angelic army in Yahweh's worship and duty. So where did this elevated angel's depravity come from? Because God granted this flawless being the freedom to choose whether or not to serve him, rather than being forced to. God would not compel Lucifer to worship him, because he prefers willing worship. Lucifer chose to rebel against God and attempted to steal his authority. Because of his hubris, he was ejected from heaven and thrown down to the ground as a result of his rebellion. As a result of his rebellion, he was expelled, in disgrace from heaven and thrown down to the earth because of his pride. One day he will be judged and thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, tormented day and night forever. Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Through your widespread trade you are filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. By your many sins and dishonest trade, you have desecrated your sanctuaries. So I made a fire come out from you, and it consumed you. And I reduced you to ashes on the ground in the sight of all who were watching. All the nations who knew you are appalled at you. You have come to a horrible end and will be no more. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 16 to 19. Admittedly, this is a difficult passage to interpret. There are many who believe that this is a description of the account of the original fall of Satan. What can we learn? We can learn the following things about this angel. Number 1. Full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. This angel, like everything else God made, was perfect when it was first created. Not only that, but he appeared to be especially attractive. Number 2. This angel lived in Eden. Number 3. Anointed cherub that covered. This could mean that this angel was in charge of all the other angels. The cherubim, along with the seraphim, appear to be heavenly beings of the greatest degree. The title of anointed cherub denotes the greatest rank among the cherubim. The term "that covered" reminds us that the cherubim guarded the Ark of the Covenant, which was placed close to God's presence. All of these factors appear to point to this personage having the greatest rank of any created being in the cosmos. However, it's probable that the anointed cherub isn't describing the person in question, but rather the king of Tyre, whom the anointed cherub was defending. Number 4. Was in God's holy mountain. The statement here refers to the dwelling place of God, His visible glory. This angel was in the Lord's close presence. Number 5. Walked in the midst of stones of fire. The stones of fire seem to speak of the nearness to God's throne. When Moses brought Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders up to Mount Sinai to see God's presence, we read the following. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were the very heaven for clearness. And the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. Exodus chapter 24, verses 10 to 17. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw God, and did eat and drink. And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me into the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone, and a law, and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. And Moses rose up, and his minister Joshua. And Moses went up into the mount of God. And he said unto the elders, Tarry ye here for us, until we come again unto you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have any matters to do, let him come unto them. And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount. And the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. This description could be the same as the stones of fire in Ezekiel. If so, it could indicate the nearness this angel had to the throne of God. Number 6. Perfect in all his ways until his fall. The perfection of this creature is again stressed. Number 7. He was lifted up with pride because of his beauty. This creature was hoisted up with pride because of his wonderful beauty. On the matter of pride, the Bible has a lot to say. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. Lucifer was so taken with his own beauty, brilliance, power, and position that he began to crave the respect and glory that only God deserved. This pride reflects the beginning of sin in the universe. It is significant that the wording used to describe this fits other Bible passages that speak about Satan. For example, the 5 I wills in Isaiah chapter 14 indicate an element of pride, which was also evidenced in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 17. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings, that they might gaze at you. Number 8. His wisdom was corrupted because of his brightness. The great wisdom of this personage had now been corrupted. It was obviously insane to believe that the creature could defeat the Creator. Number 10. He was thrown out of the mountain of God. Luke chapter 10, verse 18. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Number 10. His position was degraded when he sinned. This angel would no longer be able to hold such a high position. He will never be referred to as the anointed cherub or any other title he once possessed. Number 11. He became an enemy of humanity. This angel is now known as Satan, humanity's adversary and foe.